you think it's permissible for people to attack me, and that's covered under self-defense, even if I don't strike them first?
I think that there's an argument to be made during such terrible times as these that like opposition forces could be justified. Yeah, I
with attacking or killing people that don't agree with them.
Potentially, yes, yeah. I think so.
Attacking or killing people that don't agree with them is permissible during times like
well,
these.
Can I give you like a philosophical example? Like if I ran into a room and I said, "Oh my God, there's a guy in the hallway. He's trying to kill me," and then you like ran out and like to defend me because we were buddies. You like killed that guy or hurt him or whatever you did. Like I'd be culpable for anything you did to him because of the lies that I've told.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that you're spreading ideologies that are, in this analogy, similar to running into the room and saying it's those immigrants
I
out
don't
there
think so.
that. It's
what ideas am I spreading? Was I spreading any ideas today?
You're spreading the idea that you should watch that video and think that Jonathan Ross is.
Was I spreading that idea today?
You spread that idea to me.
No, you asked me what my opinion was, and I told you because you asked.
Yes.
Right. So was I going around telling people?
So here you are on the street talking about it. I'm talking about it.
Was I going around telling people that opinion?
What?
Was I going around telling people that opinion?
You told me.
Because you asked. Did I tell anyone that opinion?
Yeah, we come out in the street. We talk about things. We
did I tell anyone who didn't ask?
We talk about the fact that this guy doesn't think Renee Good was murdered and he likes ice.
This guy is literally stalking me.
Looking after my neighbors, man. Like, you support ICE. You don't think Renee Good was murdered. And
you think that it would be acceptable for somebody to hurt or kill me?
No, I didn't say that.
You did. You said that you think that it's acceptable for opposition forces to hurt or kill people who don't agree with them.
Not like.
And you are intentionally,
intentionally
following me around and telling opposition forces that I don't agree with them.
Yes, I'm exercising my First Amendment right to name and shame you.
You think that it would be acceptable for people to hurt or kill me?
For the things that you believe in.
Yeah.
Gang, and yes, that ICE agent in Minnesota was defending himself. What the hell is wrong with y'all? What wasn't y'all watching? Was our ass watching the same video? And why was she blocking off the street? Y'all getting y'all ass on this internet talking about she was a mother of three. She knew she was a mother of three before she pulled the shit she pulled. Why was she blocking off the street? Why did she try to pull off when the agent was holding on to her car? She tried to run them over. What is going on? We all seen the same video. Stop this shit. And the same ones on this internet screaming for the federal agent, the ICE agent, to get locked up because he defended himself. Y'all ass was just on this internet and still is on this internet making fun of Charlie Kirk because of what happened to him, because your ass got butt hurt because he told y'all ass the truth. Y'all still spitting on that man's grave. Talking about, oh, he was racist because he was honest. He was honest with everybody, not just the black community. But again, when people tell y'all ass shit y'all don't want to hear, y'all want to assassinate their character. Y'all want to destroy their legacies. Y'all talking about, oh, she was a mother of three. Again, she knew she was a mother of three before she decided to go out there and like, hey, let me go over here and run some motherfuckers over. What is wrong with y'all? What is wrong with y'all? Stop this victim shit. Even if it wasn't a federal agent, what do you think gonna happen if you try to run over somebody with a firearm? Do you think that's smart? She knew exactly what she was doing. And all the people out there complaining, why the hell y'all ain't try to intervene and tell her ass to get out the intersection? Why it take for the ICE agents to pull up and do all that? Y'all like getting out there causing a disturbance, and then as soon as some shit hit the fan, then y'all ass want to start the waterworks. But always remember, before y'all start this performative shit, all this weird ass marching and shit, y'all are not the party of peace. We seen y'all real side before the incident with Charlie Kirk. But y'all really showed y'all ass around that time. Again, say them goddamn tears. Respect law enforcement. Respect authority. What y'all think gonna happen? Come on now, I'm not even a federal agent. I'm telling you, if you try to run me over and I got that hot shit on me, trust me, it ain't gonna end well.
Morning, everyone. Michael Francis here, just going in for my morning workout on a Saturday. And I just want to thank a lot of people here who gave really good responses to my last two videos about Maduro and Venezuela, and also about the incident in Minneapolis. I just want to comment on that. The shooting, the tragic shooting in Minneapolis. Some people said, well, Michael, you don't understand. The cop was wrong. And my response was, okay, but the woman is still dead. Right or wrong? Nobody is saying a cop is not going to be wrong, and I'm not commenting on this incident. There's an investigation. We'll see what happens. Okay, but yeah, okay. Cops are not infallible. ICE agents are not infallible. They might make a mistake. They might overreact. That's why you don't antagonize them. You just don't do it. They have a gun. There's an old expression. You don't take a knife to a gunfight. And you certainly don't take your mouth or your body to a gunfight. Against an agent or a cop that's licensed and trained to shoot and kill, if they feel threatened in any way, if they believe it's self-defense, or they're even just crazy and do it anyway, you just don't do it, people. You don't put yourself in harm's way. And that's why I'm saying these idiot and moronic governors and mayors, mostly in blue states, that are telling their people to resist these cops and ICE agents that have guns, they should be telling them, don't do that. Protest peacefully and let us handle the rest, because you can't win. And if I don't tell you that, I'm putting you in harm's way. But they don't care. Tim Walz is a phony, a moron, a hypocrite. Newsom, the same thing. Pritzker, the same thing. They don't care about their people. If they did, they would advise them properly. So that's it. Whether the cop was right or wrong doesn't matter. The person is dead. You're still gonna die. What does it matter to you? Don't put yourself in harm's way. And all you guys, don't ever let your woman, your lady, don't ever put them in that situation, man. Grow the hell up and be a man. Please. That's it for today. Have a great weekend. Love all you guys. I really do.
Hearing common sense so far, that's all you're hearing.
Starting again, get back, using force to compel compliance with the lawful order, shoves them back. The black guy comes back into frame and puts his hand on the officer's weapon right there. And that's when the officer raises it.
Guys trying to grab the gun, you get shot in the face with pepper spray.
My folks, that's about as aggressive an action as you can do. It has to be presumed you're attempting to disarm the officer. So now there's two possible bodies of law that we could look at here that might be applied against this officer. There's federal law and there's state law. The federal law of self-defense, I'm not going to pull it up because it's really just the 5 elements without avoidance. There's no legal duty to retreat under federal self-defense law. And then there's the state law. And the state law should not apply here, but we'll take a look at it anyway. Here's my buddy Bill, shipwrecked crew, former federal prosecutor, defense attorney for dozens and dozens of the January 6th protesters. He writes, as soon as she accelerated with the officer in front of her, she committed the 20-year version of Section 111B offense. At that moment, she became a fleeing felon and deadly or dangerous threat to the community that justified the use of deadly force. The case law in favor of the officer is robust and rock solid. And that's definitely true. The law is, but of course, as I said, the law is not rocket science in this stuff. We're dealing with human beings when it comes to prosecutors, judges, and juries. So here is that actual statute he's referencing. Whoever forcibly assaults, basically a federal officer, shall, where the act in violation constitutes only simple assault, misdemeanor assault, meaning assault not likely to cause death or serious bodily injury, is looking at a year in prison. But we're...
And no one has mentioned that so far. I've been in plenty of X spaces talking about this. Nobody has talked about the responsibility and what could potentially have happened to the driver for doing what she did. It was a felony, apparently a felony for what she did. But no one's talking about that on the left, and even people on the right now. And that's the whole point I named it when I named it. It's like there's so many of these people on the right now that are defending her and are against law enforcement as if it's okay. And it's been like this for a very long time, that it's okay to resist arrest. It's a normal thing now. They've normalized it.
Such acts involve physical contact with the victim of that assault. They're looking at 8 years, or if it involves a deadly weapon, then the penalty is up to 20 years. And of course, here we had a deadly weapon. The car was being used as a deadly weapon. Now,
Cristobal, no one's saying that she deserved to be killed. She put herself in a situation where she did get killed. So, once again, you start messing with law enforcement in any way, shape, or form, you antagonize them. And then you try and flee the scene instead of getting out of the car and doing what the law enforcement person asked you to do, get out of the car. Instead, you don't do that. You take off. That's your own fault.
I don't think Minnesota law will play any role here, but just for purposes of thoroughness, here's Minnesota statute on authorized use of force. Can be used by a public officer under in effecting a lawful arrest in the execution of legal process. Any of these would justify the use of force by this officer. If he had been a civilian, then it would be when the force is used by a person in resisting or aiding another to resist an offense against the person. Of course, the officer has the benefit of this provision too, but this is the one you would use if you were a non-officer and you were trying to defend a use of force.
It's not even
now,
a dispute
importantly,
at
like
this point.
every state, really, Minnesota has a rule for when you can use force, and it has certain conditions, like here. And then they'll have a second rule for when you can use deadly force, and they'll impose additional conditions that have to be met in order for deadly force to be justified. In the case of Minnesota, it's the next successive statute. The intentional taking of the life of another is not authorized under the preceding statute, except these are the additional conditions that have to be met to justify deadly force. When necessary in resisting or preventing an offense which the actor reasonably believes exposes the actor or another to great bodily harm or death. So you can't take a life, use deadly defensive force, unless you're facing a threat of great bodily harm or death. That's proportionality, or preventing the commission of a felony in your house. So dealing with a burglary situation, which obviously doesn't apply here. So even under Minnesota state law, this officer would be justified. Even as a non-police officer, he'd be justified as using deadly defensive force if someone's driving a car at him with the apparent intent to cause him death or serious bodily injury. Now, I don't believe this officer can be subject to state prosecution because he was a federal law enforcement officer acting within the scope of his duties. Now, just working for the federal government doesn't give you immunity from state law. If you're a DHS officer and you're driving drunk, you can be prosecuted in state court for DWI. If you're a DHS officer and you just decide you're tired of your spouse and you murder them, that's not part of your legal duties. You can be prosecuted for murder and under state law. But if you're engaged in your official duties for the federal...
It'll be the last question I ask, Cristobal, because, I mean, if you want to go somewhere else and be in your echo chamber with a bunch of other weirdos, go ahead and do it. But if somebody tried to kill me with their car, I'd call them a fucking bitch too. So enough, dude. Just go somewhere else. You don't need to be here. There's plenty of people on Twitter and other places you can go on and listen to other people talk about, weirdo leftists, and they're all the violent ones. So apparently you like violent leftists, so go hang out with them.
Government. The Supremacy Clause says you are free of prosecution for conduct within the scope of those duties. You cannot be prosecuted under state law. And I think there's really no question that would apply here. So I saw the Governor Tim Walz, gayest man in America, says, "I've seen the video. Don't believe the propaganda machine. The state will ensure there is a full, fair, expeditious investigation to ensure accountability and justice." Well, they can investigate anything they want. I don't think they'll be able to prosecute. And here's the Somalian mayor. Whoop, I didn't show you that. Sorry. There's a Tim Walz X post. He's going to ensure accountability and justice through a full, fair, and expeditious investigation. You think Tim Walz has ever done anything expeditiously? And then we have the Somalian mayor of Minneapolis, Mayor Frey. Let's hear what he has to say.
And I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city.
Really? We've seen how they opened up a lot of daycares, didn't they? No matter what these guys say, there's effectively zero prospect this officer could be prosecuted under state law. So I wouldn't worry about that if I were him. Now, if he could be prosecuted under state law, then we would have a problem, wouldn't we? It would be the same problem we have in any politically charged case. Just like the witnesses in the Michael Brown case lied about what they saw to make it look like an execution in the street. We had the same problem. We had the problem in the George Zimmerman trial down in Florida 12 or so years ago. There were people lying during jury selection to get on the jury. They were pretending, oh no, I've never formed an opinion. And they had Facebook pages that were basically lynch George Zimmerman Facebook pages. And they were just lying. They were going to falsely take the oath to be impartial, and then they would have voted to convict. No matter what the evidence, they would have voted to convict. They were there to do justice. We had the same thing in the Derek Chauvin trial. In the George Zimmerman case, the defense team was so excellent. They identified these fake jurors and got them dismissed before they were seated on the jury. But in the Derek Chauvin case, there was at least a couple jurors there who were active protesters over the death of George Floyd. They were never going to vote to acquit Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin never had any prospect of real due process in that trial. And so these people will lie to get on the trial. Now, you get a Somalian who thinks he's an American citizen on a jury. You think he's going to vote anything but to convict this officer if the officer were in state court? A Klan member, you think he's going to vote against this Klan when seated on the jury? Of course not. Of course not. So if this officer were tried in state court, I would have serious concerns about his ability to get a fair trial in state court. Let's see. Now, what's been happening since the shooting? Lots of fun and games are continuing. I don't know why every one of these people is not face down in the snow, getting zip tied and dragged off. I would like to hear some answers from Kristi Noem, from Tom Homan, from Gregory Bavino, but this is what's going on. There are also fat, pasty white girls and fat, pasty white guys. Where are all the Somalians? Get back! Get back! Get back! Right in the face! Get back! Fuck off! All on video! You fucking... And then what happens? Is this piece of video is put in front of an unelected, black-robed, tyrannical, inferior district trial court judge, and she says, well, that feels like an unlawful use of force to me. I'm going to prohibit ICE from operating in Minneapolis. I'm going to make Gregory Bavino show up in my courtroom every day at 5 o'clock and explain to me what he was doing that day. That judge got a rare order of mandamus from her superiors. I might have a closer up. I do. I got a different angle on that poof. Let's take a look at that just because it's good for a laugh. Here we go. It happens quick, so pay attention. Pay attention. Here we go. Get back! Get back! Get back! Get back! Bam. Whoa! Now, I want you to notice something. Did you see what happened the instant before the officer raised the barrel of that less lethal device and put that puff in that guy's face? Let's go back here. The black gentleman has his hands up. The officer's telling him to disperse, pushing him back. That's all allowed. And the black guy puts his hand on the officer's weapon. Can you see that? Let me make it bigger. Starting again. Get back. Using force to compel compliance with the lawful order. Shoves him back. The black guy comes back into frame and puts his hand on the officer's weapon right there. And that's when the officer raises it and poof. You can't touch an officer's weapon and not get a response, my folks. That's about as aggressive an action as you can do. It has to be presumed you're attempting to disarm the officer. Disarm the officer. Pav. And someone should put music to that. But, they'll find some left-wing lawyer to go before a judge and say, well, Your Honor, that potentially could have caused eye injury. That was deadly force. Which, by the way, I would suggest would be authorized there, too. You start fighting an officer for his weapons, even his non-deadly force weapons, that's a deadly force threat. If you're fighting the officer for weapons that you could then use to incapacitate him, the next thing you're taking from him is his gun. Most officers killed in the line of duty many of them are killed with their own weapon, taken from them by the bad guy. By the way, if you'd like to be hard to convict, if you're ever compelled to.
All right, so that's the first one. So Cristobal, I'm sure you're okay with resisting arrest and criminals taking peace officers' guns away from them and shooting them because you are on the side of criminals. So I'm glad that we've gotten that straightened out. So keep on hanging out because I'm going to keep playing more of these because I've given my opinion over 2 hours over X Spaces with people who want to try and argue the fact that these criminals and violent leftists shouldn't be held accountable for what they do, but the people who are the experts, like this guy who is a self-defense lawyer, as well as other law enforcement, federal law enforcement, and local law enforcement, they've all confirmed beyond any reasonable doubt that the shooting was clean, and it was, and he's not going to get in trouble for it. Now, state government's going to try and bring up charges on him. However, what's going to happen is those charges are going to be moved to federal court, and the federal court's going to drop them, which is exactly what should happen. So no different than the Kyle Rittenhouse case, where people like you probably still think to this day that Kyle Rittenhouse killed 3 black people in cold blood. Well, there were 3 white people, and it was all self-defense, even though he was brought up on charges which he shouldn't have been. It was a malicious prosecution. He was found not guilty, and this won't even go to court in this particular case. So this ICE officer will not get in trouble because it was a justified shooting. So that's the bottom line. Doesn't really matter what you say or what you think. That is what it is. It is the truth. It is common sense, and it is not in dispute.
Get out of the fucking car. Out of the car. Whoa!
I'm not mad at you. Show your face. I'm not mad at you. That's okay. We don't.
This is the lesbian wife. Now
Bully
talking
Bull
to the
Dykes.
officer.
Change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to
Look at that bully.
Crazy phone cover.
us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen. Come at us.
Another foul mouth.
You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy.
That's nice. Look at that. Look at that right there. Go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Real sweetheart.
Okay.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car.
By the way, she blames herself
Out
for
of
the
the car,
death,
out of the car,
and she's
out
going
of
to
the
be
car.
brought up on charges.
Now she backs up. This officer who's wearing the body camera, the one who fires the shot.
I cannot wait until the wife gets brought up on federal charges, because she's the one who caused this whole thing by encouraging her wife to do what she did.
He moves a little bit, but most of the movement between relative to him to the car is actually the car being pointed at him.
Out of the car.
She backs up to this point,
Whoa!
and there's the impact. I want to rewind a little bit, because we'll see once she lines up the car and the officer, her lesbian wife yells at her to drive.
U.S. citizen, former felon. Come at us. You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car. Whoa!
Unbelievable. People justify that.
And why does the officer care about getting hit by a car? For one thing, he'd been hit by a car dragged by a car only 6 months earlier.
Mhm.
Needed 33 stitches to close his wounds. Orders, bam. That cop was killed by that collision. Her internal organs were ruptured and she died. Now, the FBI has taken over.
Nobody
the
cares about that on the
investigation
left,
here.
though.
They're going to lead the investigation into the ICE agent fatally shooting a woman after she allegedly attempted to run him over with her vehicle. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension will not be part of the probe and will no longer have access to case materials, scene evidence, or investigative interviews necessary to complete a thorough and independent investigation. Reminder, states cannot prosecute federal agents acting within their official duties under the Supremacy Clause. The landmark Supreme Court case on this is regarding Neagle. Neagle invited a federal law enforcement officer who was guarding a judge against prospective attack. The judge was attacked, and the federal law enforcement officer shot the attacker and killed him. But the state authorities thought that the law enforcement officer was overzealous and should not have killed the attacker. Attempted to prosecute that law enforcement officer, federal law enforcement officer, in state court, and the Supreme Court said, nope, can't do it. Can't do it under the Supremacy Clause.
There you go.
Federal officer cannot be held to answer in state court for an act authorized by federal law
There you go.
and necessary and proper to their duties, as such prosecution would impede federal operations. This qualified Supremacy Clause immunity protects agents performing lawful federal functions. I've covered that before, and I've covered Neagle in detail in the past. So The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is excluded from all case evidence by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and only the FBI leading the investigation into the ICE shooting. Game over for Democrats promising to charge the agent with murder by mob justice. Now, in theory, the state could bring a charge. I mean, that's just the prosecutor signing a piece of paper. But if they did, the case would immediately be removed to federal court and the charge dismissed. So, and as Kristi Noem says here, she was asked, why did you cut out Minnesota law enforcement? And she says they're not cut out. They just don't have jurisdiction.
They have not been cut out. They don't have any jurisdiction in this investigation.
Right. Any more than I would have jurisdiction, or a detective out of Hawaii would have jurisdiction. They just don't have jurisdiction. Now, this was an interesting bit of video because it captures some of the voice. This is after the gunshots, after the crash of the purported to be of the lesbian wife of the now dead driver. And there's some closed caption here at the bottom to help you get what's going on.
All right. Damn. Oh my gosh, this is horrible, y'all.
It's my fault. I made her come down here. It's my fault. It's my fault.
No one's talking about that.
Just to show you how crazy that they would get themselves killed trying to prevent the deportation of Somalians that have defrauded the state of billions of dollars and couldn't give a damn about them. Here's another white woman.
So what I want to know is, why won't they just pay my taxes then? If you want these people to stay here that have broken the law to come in here, pay my taxes. You could pay for all the health care. You could pay for the education of their kids. You could pay for the identities being stolen. You can pay for it all. Let you pay for it, but they don't care. The leftists that are protecting these people and that are assaulting federal agents are communists that want the middle-class taxpayer to suffer.
So, I mean, I'm just walking around kind of just dazed-eyed because I was like, I don't know if it's the right thing to do. It feels kind of wrong being here in some way. I don't know why.
And why do you think, yeah.
I don't know, like, where that stems from. Like, part of it is being like a white woman, that I'm privileged and I have a lot of privilege.
That is unbelievable. I'm a white woman and I have a ton of privilege. This is self-deprecating. This is why we have the problems that we do in America, is we have people like this that criticize their own race. I mean, she's sitting there just calling her own race terrible. And she's white. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, that is just unbelievable to me, that you would be so self-deprecating to your own race. I mean, nobody else does that.
So I feel like white tears are not always something that's helpful or necessary when black and brown people have been experiencing this for a long time. This isn't new for them, and so I don't know if that makes any sense in that way.
How did you decide that you should be here? Or are you still figuring that out?
Well, I work like 2 miles from here, so driving by, it's like I'm here. I'm 2 miles, I can stop. So, I mean, I'm just walking around kind of just.
Absolutely crazy. All right. So the question for all of us is,
And not only are they trying to be a modern day John Brown, but someone who happens to be black put a Twitter post out yesterday that said that these people are just end lovers. Now, this is somebody who's black who said this, and said basically the people that these white women are trying to save wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire, and are laughing at the fact that this woman got killed. So the actual people that these lesbians are trying to help despise them, and they're too stupid to realize it. This woman is one of those examples.
the lesbian wife be charged with a crime? Now, I want to clarify. What I really mean is, the interesting discussion is, can she be charged with a crime over the death of the driver?
I sure hope so.
There's other crimes she could well be charged with. If she was impeding, if she was obstructing, she could be charged with those crimes. If she was conspiring to impede and obstruct, she could be charged with those crimes. There's no question about that. But is there a legally sound basis for charging her with criminal liability for the death of the driver herself? And it is possible for people to have criminal liability for the actions of others. We call this derivative liability. And the main two ways this can happen, I guess I would say that there were three ways. One is conspiracy. So you conspire, you agree with others to collectively commit a crime. Say the crime is to assassinate somebody. And one of the team fires the lethal bullet. Well, the entire conspiratorial team has criminal liability for the firing of that bullet, for the death that results, because they collectively conspired to do it. They're each criminally liable for the worst acts of any of them, assuming that they were, the death was included as part of the conspiracy. That was what they were agreeing to participate in. The other form of derivative liability is to be an accessory. An accessory is when in the moment you're working to commit the crime. So you're the getaway. So because conspirators can be far apart, right? You can conspire from across the globe. You could be nowhere near where the bullet was fired. But if you were part of the conspiracy, the planning, the preparation, the gathering of information or necessary materials, you don't have to be at the scene of the shooting to still have conspiracy liability. If you're an accessory, you generally do. An accessory would be more like a getaway driver outside.
That's actually a really good point. There are parents who have given kids their guns or allowed them to have access to them. And when those kids commit crimes, the parents are also charged with crimes as well. So that's an excellent point. And in this case, I don't know what's going to happen. She'll probably, because of the sympathy deal, they'll probably let this broad go. But you can clearly see that she's encouraging, and she says it, and I think I'm not sure if he does, but I think he does play the video where she's encouraging her to drive off. She's trying to get into the passenger side of the car, and she takes off on her own wife. So, yeah, I definitely think that hopefully, the state's not going to do it. So you got to hope that federal, she'll, at least on the federal side, they'll charge her with something, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But that is a good point.
Of a bank robbery. So he's an intrinsic part, active part of the bank robbery, but he's not inside robbing the bank. He could carry liability for bank robbery, even though he's not himself technically robbing a bank. He's just driving the getaway car outside. But he's an accessory to the bank robbery. And the third form of derivative liability would be felony murder. So you're engaged in a crime of violence with another person, and the other person shoots and kills somebody, either intentionally or unintentionally. Somebody dies as a result of the violent crime. It could be that you're robbing a liquor store and your buddy has a gun. You don't have anything. You're there to be a lookout or something, but you're there with him in the liquor store and he shoots and kills the clerk. Well, he's guilty of murder for murdering the clerk, and you're guilty because you were a participant in this violent crime and the death resulted. Or he shoots at the clerk and misses and unintentionally kills a bystander. He didn't even have murderous intent to the bystander, but through the doctrine of transferred intent, his murderous intent towards the clerk transfers to the bystander. He's guilty of that murder, and you're on the hook for felony murder, for the unintentional death of the bystander that nevertheless happened in the course of committing the violent crime. It could even be while you're fleeing from the scene of the robbery in a car, you run somebody over, you can be, and he's driving. You can be on the hook for felony murder because the escape from the crime is still, it's a continuing crime. It's part of the crime. So conspiracy, accessory, and felony murder. Before I jump into each of those though, okay, so what all these forms of derivative liability have in common, conspiracy, aiding and abetting, and felony murder, is that there's some underlying predicate crime that's happening. In a conspiracy, you've agreed to participate in the commission of some underlying predicate act that is a crime. So you conspire to murder somebody, you conspire to rob a bank, you conspire to hijack a plane. The murder, the bank robbery, the hijacking, those are all crimes, and you're conspiring to commit that crime. Very similar with aiding and abetting. There has to be some underlying predicate crime that you're aiding. So say, for example, you meet a guy and you're hanging out. You don't really know him. He says, hey, let's stop at the liquor store and get some beer. You go into the liquor store to buy some beer, and he pulls out a gun and robs the place. You didn't know he was going to commit a robbery, so you're not aiding him in his robbery. You have to know that a robbery is going to be committed to be aiding and abetting. So you have to have a mens rea, a criminal mental state, knowing that a particular predicate crime was going to be committed. And in the case of felony murder, again, there has to be an underlying crime that you were committing. So your partner shoots the clerk in the liquor store. If you're participating in the robbery, you can be on the hook for felony murder. But if you didn't know a robbery was going to be committed, there's no predicate crime for which you could have derivative liability. The challenge we have here for charging this lesbian wife as either a conspirator or an abettor or under the doctrine of felony murder is what is the underlying crime that she would know was being committed, planned, intended, committed at the time the car charged at the police officer and he fired the shot. Again, I'm not talking about obstructing and all that stuff. That's a separate area. There's no question she can be charged for those things if she was engaged in that conduct, which certainly appears to be the case. I'm talking here only about the death itself. A prosecutor would have to prove beyond any reasonable doubt that she intended the car to charge at and say, kill or cause.
And I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's realistic. Again, if someone were to say to me, did she intentionally try to kill the officer? No, I don't believe that that's the case. Was she incredibly reckless? And did she try to flee, which is still a felony? Yes. But I'm talking the driver here. So she would have been, if she lived, she would have been charged with a felony for fleeing. So it was incredibly reckless behavior, which caused her own death. But if it caused the death of somebody else, she'd still be charged with murder because that's how that works. If you're committing a felony and someone dies as a result of that, you get charged with murder in most cases. Now, the wife who was kind of egging her on to do it and bullying and everything else, I don't see where that would fall into where she would be charged with conspiring to kill anyone, because I don't think the driver was trying to kill anyone. She just did something incredibly stupid, which should never have happened in the first place, which still, it's her own fault. And her wife admitted, it's so weird even saying that word, wife, but she even admitted herself after the whole thing was over that it was her fault. And it was.
A serious bodily injury to that officer. Now, we hear her say, drive, baby, drive, but what would her defense response be to that? I didn't mean drive and kill somebody. I just meant drive and get away. Yeah. Now, would it be unlawful to flee from the scene of the traffic stop? Yes,
it absolutely is.
So in terms of conspiracy, though, you have to have planned it ahead of time. It's not a spur of the moment decision. Conspiracy involves both a plan and affirmative steps you take to advance the plan. So just planning alone isn't enough. If you're planning to assassinate someone with a rifle, it would be like, all right, here's the plan, and then somebody goes out and gets the rifle. You have that affirmative step. Is there any evidence of that this was conspired ahead of time? I don't mean even the blocking of the road. I mean the attempt to flee. You think they conspired that? What would your evidence be of that? Evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. We don't have that in the video. We have a spontaneous remark. Now, could the remark be part of aiding and abetting the flight? Maybe. But again, she would say, listen, at worst, I was encouraging her to run from the scene. That might be some independent crime. She could be charged with aiding and abetting, but it's not a killing. Felony murder, a similar problem. What's the predicate crime that the lesbian wife would have been aware of? Now, this gets a little more traction because my buddy Nick Rekieta, who is a suspended Minnesota
that guy's a real
lawyer,
dream.
Worked in criminal defense. He let me know that Minnesota actually makes it a felony to flee from a traffic stop in this, which is effectively what this was. So now, if the flight is a felony, even if what the lesbian wife was saying was, I didn't mean drive, baby, drive, like drive over the cop. I meant drive, baby, drive, like get away so you're not arrested, which of course is insane. They have the plate of the car. They would have tracked him down. But all I meant was drive, baby, drive, get away, not hurt or kill anybody. Well, if driving away is a felony, then she's aiding and abetting a felony. I think there's a solid argument to make there. And if you're engaged in aiding and abetting a felony and someone's killed, and it doesn't have to be the person who was intended to be killed. Like I said, in the liquor store scenario, it could be your partner shoots at the clerk and misses and hits an innocent bystander they ever even knew was there. All that matters is that you were engaged in an act of violence and somebody died as a result. Well, here, of course, the somebody was the driver. But when you say drive, baby, drive, are you aiding and abetting felony flight from a stop by a law enforcement officer? I think it's a pretty good argument to make there. Are you participating in the flight from the stop? I would suggest you are. And if it's a felony under Minnesota law, then you could have a prospect for felony.
Okay, so that makes sense then. If the wife is saying flee, go, that is committing a felony, which he was saying, yeah, which is the fleeing itself, if she had lived, would have been charged with a felony. So, yeah, I mean, that he's making an argument there. Now, would it hold up in court? Who knows? Because then, of course, it has to go in front of a jury. But do what everybody else does. You know, bring them up on charges. They bring if they were on the right, and it was everything was turned around and the roles were reversed. Of course, the charges it would be a Kyle Rittenhouse situation. So
murder. But then we run into another wrinkle. This is looking at it from state law, the Minnesota statute that says it's a felony to flee from a stop. Federal prosecutors cannot prosecute under state law with narrow exceptions. So there is a very narrow exception if you're on a federal facility premises and you commit something that was a state crime, but there doesn't happen to be a federal statute about it. So, for example, you trespass onto federal property. Believe it or not, the federal government doesn't have a trespass statute. So what they would do in that case is they would say, all right, we don't have a trespass statute, but this happened on federal property. And therefore, we're allowed to apply the state trespass statute in federal court, as if it were a federal statute. And that does happen. But the key is you have to be on federal property. If you're not on federal property, federal prosecutors have no authority to apply state law in a federal court prosecution. So Minnesota could do it. If Minnesota wanted to prosecute the lesbian wife under this theory that she was aiding and abetting felony flight from the scene and therefore has felony murder liability for that conduct that resulted in the death of the driver, Minnesota could have a solid shot at doing that. Do you think Minnesota?
I think the blocking of agents, though, would be at most a misdemeanor and not a felony. So, it's an aggravated thing. And again, what do I know? I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure that, if they brought that up in court and charged the wife with aiding and abetting the fleeing, that they would bring that up in court during the trial process and say, hey, they were known paid activists that were going around blocking federal vehicles, harassing federal agents. They were known agitators committing these. I would have to think that if you block a federal vehicle, that is at least at a very minimum, a misdemeanor.
Minnesota wants to do that? Minnesota's on the lesbian wife's side. They're the same team. So Minnesota's not going to prosecute this woman. They'll probably give her a medal.
And that's the sad part.
If she doesn't.
That's the sad part. So now you're talking teams. And the next door neighbor, Wisconsin, in Kenosha, or whatever the town was, who brought up charges on Kyle Rittenhouse. We know that should never have happened. That was malicious prosecution. That prosecutor brought that up because he was under pressure, political pressure, to bring up charges on Kyle Rittenhouse. That should never have happened. It was clear-cut self-defense. But they brought him up on charges, and good thing that he had good lawyers, and he was acquitted on all charges. People to this day still think that he shot 3 black people in cold blood and hunted them down. That's how ignorant most people are, especially on the left. And so it's a team sport. Everybody treats it like it's a soccer match or a football game. I mean, if you take this particular incident in a vacuum and you just isolate it and compartmentalize what happened, take all the ideology and politics out of it, it's a clear-cut case. It's a clean shoot. Everybody will tell you that. Any expert, any law enforcement officer, retired or current, will tell you it was clean. But ideologically, somebody's going to tell you no. It was even people on the right now. Like, if you don't blame Israel for this thing or all of this stuff having to do with Israel, then you are a shill for Israel, because the ICE agents were trained by the IDF. And the idea, and I bring up to that when people say that, when I'm in these X spaces arguing with them, I'm like, okay, so the IDF trained them to be assassins. So you're telling me that this was an assassination? I mean, how ridiculous does that sound?
Already have a state job, they'll probably give her a state job. So the only place the lesbian wife would be prosecuted would be in federal court. And the federal court would not be, because this was not on federal property, would not be able to apply the Minnesota statute as the underlying predicate crime of felony flight from the scene. So I don't see a lot of prospects for a federal prosecutor to be able to charge this woman over the death of the driver. Other things, other conduct, sure, but not over the death of the driver. Now, if different evidence were to emerge, if it turns out like they recorded themselves saying, hey, and if you have the opportunity, make sure you run over and kill a cop, that would be conspiracy of the intent to kill the cop. But absent that kind of evidence, based purely on what we have now and what's in that video, the phrase drive, baby, drive would not be enough, in my view, to prove a murderous intent beyond a reasonable doubt, as opposed to an intent simply to flee the scene. By the way, if you'd like to be...
Yeah, so there are things now coming out. Producer Bethany, thank you for the info. I do have a producer. I got to shout her out. Thanks for staying up late. But this guy, this ICE agent, is a Christian conservative and has a Filipino wife. So it once again defeats the narrative of what the left is wanting you, the communist left, I should clarify, wants you to believe that he's this, of course, white supremacist and everything else, all the, typical names that they give these guys, and the smearing. I saw things where they're saying that he had a hidden Tinder account, and the common left thing is to smear him as he's a homosexual or something like that. Meanwhile, everybody that's involved in it, all this stuff, are homosexuals. So yeah, I just find it funny how they use the same techniques repeated over and over and over again that are just so old that most of any of us that have somewhat of a room temperature IQ can figure out, okay, this is, they're paid, they're scripted, they just repeat the same things over and over again. It's just completely obvious that this is an op, and all of this stuff is arranged and paid for and planned. They were looking for this. This is a George Floyd moment, and what they do is, in their playbook, is they look for these types of things to get to latch onto in order to have an excuse to go out there and riot, which they're going to do. I mean, they already tried in Minnesota tonight, but I think it was mostly broken up. I don't think they're going to get much in the way of they're going to get that stuff started here. I think that's going to be cracked down on pretty hard. We'll have to see, but yeah, it's all predictable.
Oh my God, drag him back.
Go back. Let's get back to the sidewalk. Hold on, I'll help you up.
These are all paid protesters.
There you go.
Why are they all so fat? America's starving, oppressed.
And they're all admitting that they're paid. They're all saying it outright. They keep
You recall
getting tripped
yesterday
up.
I was talking about all the fraud. all the fraud in Minnesota, the Somalian fraud, the fraud everywhere, Texas, California, anywhere we've brought in third world migrants, they engage in fraud. And it's not being done on some kind of individual basis. These are an organized fraud industry. That's why the numbers are so vast and the sums being stolen are so tremendous. Billions and billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars. And it's facilitated. They're trained by Soros-related NGOs. They have accountants and lawyers, social workers working with these Somalians to facilitate.
And yeah, Bethany brought up something else that just texted me. What they do is they dress in what's called black bloc, and what that means is they dress all in black, and from head to toe, their helmets are black, their jeans, their shirts, everything is in black. And the purpose of that is that when they get into these huge crowds and commit violence, because that's what they're trained to do and paid to do, they've learned that if they dress all similarly, that it's extremely hard for them to be identified, especially when they're wearing masks. So if they commit a crime, which they constantly do, and someone's asked as a witness to provide any sort of details of what happened, it's much more difficult for them to provide that information because everybody's dressed the same. So to sit there and try and gaslight people like us and say it's the ICE agents that are the problem, when it's obviously not, and the pattern of behavior repeats itself over and over and over again, then people have had enough. And at least now at this point, I have my problems with the current administration for sure. Not doing what I want them to do, but I certainly voted for this. And obviously, because ICE is doing what they're doing, and even people on the right, they're saying, oh, well, they need to do it in a better way. How? Okay, so that you just quit? Because no matter what they do, they're going to get abused physically and verbally. Doesn't matter how they do it. So either they're going to do it or they're not. And I say, you got to put these people away for at least a decade. If you're gonna go out there and impede a federal officer, there needs to be a law in place, just like when they were tearing down the statues. You want to tear down a statue? 10 years. That's it. That's going to stop it real quick. And then go after the money. The administration's not going after the money. You're not putting George Soros in jail. You're not putting his son in jail. You're not putting these people, these NGOs that are running the NGOs in jail. Until you start doing this stuff is going to continue happening. And I blame the administration for this stuff, the current one, because they're not doing enough to stop it.
Facilitate their ability to, they have legislators who change the rules of the game so they can seize this money, and it may even be lawful. It may not even be a crime. For example, I think I mentioned in some of these daycare centers in some of these states, they get to claim a certain number of enrolled students, and then they get to charge the state for every student who's enrolled. And if the student never actually shows up to the daycare, it doesn't matter. As long as the student is enrolled, they get paid. That was a change in the law that was made to facilitate the fraud and make it legal. Now, if these Somalian daycares are accepting money from the state for children who never show up, who in fact may be enrolled at 100 different daycares, obviously couldn't be at every one simultaneously. As long as they're only asking the state to pay for enrolled students, they're not actually breaking the law. You can't convict them for anything. And the money's already gone. Well, that kind of industrial organization is also true of these protests. These are paid protesters at these events. Like this person says about the woman who was killed yesterday, she could have been any one of us. She could have been any one of us. And the appropriate response is, yeah, who amongst us hasn't traveled to another state to impede an ongoing ICE operation, refused to comply with explicit orders from law enforcement to exit the vehicle, and proceeded to accelerate towards a federal agent standing in front of the car? It could have been any one of us. No, it would have to be one of us who was paid to engage in this behavior. Here's a poster. Activism for hire. How?
And see, that's the thing. They're getting paid to hopefully, and this is where it's really dangerous. They're being paid to cross the line or dance on that razor's edge in hopes that something will happen in order to spark outrage. And what did it end up doing? It got somebody killed. Now, I'm indifferent on the person who got killed because she put herself in that situation. But what if it was the officer? What if it was somebody innocent, an innocent bystander? Still don't know what happened to the dog. I actually care more about the dog in this situation. So when you have these people who are paid provocateurs to do these things, and then it goes too far and someone actually gets killed, that's where you need to start cracking down. And that's when people need to start going to jail for a long ass time. Otherwise, more people are going to die as a result of it.
To land a paid protesting job. You wonder how these Antifa people and BLM people and these protesters, the anti-ICE protesters, how they make a living? This is how they make a living. This is how they make a living. And here's a clip of a woman talking about the woman who was killed yesterday and saying, almost saying, she was doing what she was paid to do. And she catches herself and instead says she was doing what she was here to do. I heard paid.
They clearly wanted her out of there because she was the main car leading the protest, is my understanding. I talked to another guy who was driving behind her, but she was very successful in blocking traffic. She was doing what she was set out to do, and so they wanted to get her the hell out of there.
I think she was going to say made to do, not paid to do. I mean, I heard an M there. I think this guy's kind of stretching it a little bit, and I sort of understand he's trying to sort of sensationalize a little bit, which is understandable. But I think we all have to be, sort of careful on what we say, because this woman was a bystander. She had nothing to do with any of this. She's just she's just saying, this is what I saw. She's not a protester as far as I know. So it's not fair to kind of paint her into a corner.
Obviously, an organized series of cars doing all this blockading. Jack Posobiec, there's his X handle, so you can use that to find my appearance on the show this afternoon. Says it's now starting to appear like the agitators in Minneapolis deliberately staged this provocation, looking to entrap ICE agents. Funny. They followed ICE all day. One blockaded the road while others stood outside filming, as seen in the video when the woman was shot. 4 ramming incidents occurred just today.
There you go.
And of course, there's no question it was deliberately staged, right? I'm sure what they were hoping for is not that the woman would get killed, but they would get more propaganda photos of an officer pointing a gun at a woman and a mother of 3. She was a poet, an award-winning poet, and they're pointing guns at her. They didn't know she would accelerate her car at the cop and end up getting herself killed. But that's the kind of thing they're looking for. They're trying to provoke opportunities to generate propaganda material. Why? Because propaganda works. And
that's the problem. And now it's obviously gone too far. So now what do you do? I mean, it's a lose-lose situation for the administration and for ICE. It doesn't really matter anymore. Well, whatever it is that you do, you're losing. But I certainly, tiptoeing around and walking on eggshells, this shit's got to stop. I mean, at some point, you got to start cracking down on these people, and then they'll stop. But until then, I mean, now, thank God it wasn't the ICE agent, because he's out there doing his job, and these guys are getting rammed by cars and dragged by cars. This guy got dragged by a car 6 months ago by an illegal immigrant. He ended up in the hospital. So this stuff happens, and once again, where does the violence come from? I hear all the time, oh well, J6 in Charlottesville. It's not even close. Not even close to the violence that's going on. Look at the violence that's going on here. It's not even in the same stratosphere.
Washing works. It manipulates our minds. It leads us to making the conclusions and coming to the decisions they want us to conclude and decide. The shooting of the woman by ICE is an empathy trap, similar to children in cages. To preserve the West, we must control our borders and curb mass immigration, which of course is what these protesters are fighting. This requires a large number of interactions, many of which carry potential danger, especially if the individual disobeys ICE. With such a high volume of interactions, things are bound to go wrong sometimes. Individual ICE agents do not act optimally in every moment of every situation, and of course, we can't demand that of them. Yet we cannot, for this reason, permit uncontrolled illegal immigration or even legal immigration to continue or allow millions of illegal immigrants.
Hey, cool. I'm just going to do this one time because, there was somebody else in here trying to do the same thing. And I'm only going to answer you one time. And if you super chat, I'll read your comments only if you pay me. But unarmed civilian, I don't know if you know this or not. You probably don't, because that's why you're making the comments that you are. A vehicle is considered by law enforcement, lawyers, the law itself. A car is considered a deadly weapon. So if you're going to say that kind of stuff, obviously I'm not going to continue to waste my time, interacting with you. But if you do super chat me at superchatme.com, I will read them, at least $5 or more. But from there on, I'm not going to read them. But you have no idea what you're talking about.
Or legal immigrants to remain in our countries. Instead, we could recognize that once millions of illegal immigrants are admitted into the country without any serious planned low conflict mechanism for removing them again, tragedy occurring at some point is already baked in as a statistical certainty. And of course, when he says the West, he means the first world in its existential battle with the third world. So speaking of propaganda, classic example. Here's a black man looking aghast. His hands are up in a defensive gesture. A cop's pointing a gun at him. And this cop would fire some kind of powder bag into the dude's face. Look how it's characterized by power to the people. Proud socialist is the handle. Another horrifying image out of Minneapolis. Look at the terror on this man's face as a federal agent points a gun at his face. It's not a gun. It's a less lethal weapon. And threatens his life. He's not threatening his life. Enough is enough. Our government is committing war crimes abroad and murdering and terrorizing citizens at home. We need a revolution. This is the kind of photo they dream of getting and why they orchestrate these conflicts. The truth is, of course, this is a masterclass in propaganda. Chef Andrew Gruel, by the way, is a great follow. Great chef. The caption says, terrorized innocent man. The reality, this black dude grabbed the officer's weapon moments before. What wasn't shown is a guy trying to take the officer's weapon. You grab onto an officer's weapon, he's going to shoot you with it. They are inciting these events and then using bad angles and edited footage to propagandize the public. This is a media strategy amongst communists. It's a strategy. It's an industry. It's all well orchestrated. And you cannot treat these people as like individual criminal defendants. This is an organized, seditious conspiracy. And when people organize into a seditious conspiracy, they're acting as one entity, and everyone involved in the conspiracy is responsible and legally liable for any act of anyone else in the conspiracy. That's the nature of a conspiracy. That the sum of the parts is the sum of the whole is greater than the value of the individual parts. Look at the theater they engage in. Here's a recent video of ICE agents hitting someone with their car and laughing about it. This woman did this on purpose. She literally steps in front of this ICE vehicle. She knows it's an ICE vehicle.
She walked right out in front of it. And so I actually had somebody in a he runs the biggest X space on X. Thousands of people. And he tried to argue with me that that person was hit by an ICE vehicle, and she actually walked right out in front of it. Now, she could have gotten seriously hurt or killed, but that's what you're dealing with. And the same people that are defending these people that online are these people. They're literally so dumb that they put themselves in these situations, and they're taking out their own trash by putting themselves in it. But what's a shame is that somebody ends up having to suffer the consequences of eliminating them. But they're eliminating themselves, at least they're doing so. But because they're that dumb that they put themselves in those positions. So it's funny, at least, from that point, to see how smart they think they are, and then when they end up either hurt or dead. But yeah, these are the types of arguments. This woman stepping out in front of a vehicle and saying, he hit me.
They've got flashing lights going. so that they can have this image of her. This is how crazy they are.
Lunatics.
This could have broken her hip, broken her femur. She could have been clear run over by the cop. This is how mad they are. The shooting that happened yesterday, here's a clip that demonstrably shows the officer who fired the fatal shot was actually struck by the vehicle.
Yeah.
He was injured. He had to go to the hospital. And by the way, did you know that this particular officer, only 6 months ago, was rammed? His physical body was rammed by a protester driving a vehicle. He needed.
So I told you that before, that he was actually hit by an illegal immigrant and dragged to where he ended up having to be in the hospital. And the same people too, by the way, that are against the ICE officer laughed at Charlie Kirk when he got shot. So this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a lunatics on the left that want to tell you you're the bad person. We're not listening to it anymore. No one's paying attention to it anymore. You can kick and scream, all you want. It's over with now. Now shit's hoppening. Now we're cracking down on your ass. And it's only going to become more and more, hopefully there's going to be way more cracking down on these people and their violent behavior and putting them in jail for a very long time.
33 stitches just 6 months ago. So when she's pointing her wheels at him and spinning them up on the tarmac, he knows what's coming. He knows it can cause serious bodily injury. He's experienced it himself. So, of course, he shot her. And we can see from this image the bullet hole right there in the windshield. So he was at this corner, probably standing at this spot against the vehicle when he fired that first shot. What's it look like when a cop gets hit by a car? Just happened to get some video of this. Look at this. This happens to be a female officer dealing with a suspect in a car.
As the Jeep continued to advance, Officer Caprio got off one shot. WJZ won't show the rest, but a somber jury saw and heard Amy Caprio dying from massive crushing injuries.
She dies of massive crushing injuries.
As the Jeep continued to advance.
See, the left doesn't care about that. They laugh at that. They think it's funny. So people who are good people who are out here like this officer trying to stop a criminal gets killed. But then somebody who is basically the same type of person behind the wheel, this Renee, whoever it is, driving at an officer, the officer's the bad guy. No one's falling for it anymore. No one cares. No one's paying attention to the screaming and yelling anymore. No one's paying attention to the weirdos with the pink hair. No one's paying attention to the paid Soros-backed losers. I just hope that Trump goes even farther than this. We'll see what happens.
Officer Caprio got off one shot. WJZ won't.
That's what this cop here was facing yesterday. And he was well aware of what he was facing. Can you imagine just trying to do your job as a law officer, getting run over by a car, dragged by insane Antifa protesters, surviving, and then they try to kill you again the same way just 6 months later? The officer who defended himself today should be given a medal. This was really interesting too. This was a CNN reporter at the event after it happens, of course, and a protester comes up and begins to harass her, stands between her and the camera, starts aggressively demanding, who are you with? Who are you from? And the moment she says she's with CNN, the protester just casually walks away.
This proves it also beyond.
You think the protester would have done that if this was Nick Sorter or any of the independent journalists on the right? Check this out. Because they're on the same team.
Hilarious.
CNN and these seditionists are on the same team.
A growing smaller crowd. This is controlled. The scene spans several blocks. We are here at Portland Avenue and East 35th, but it goes at least 2 or 3 blocks.
Who are you? Who do you work
thank
for?
you.
Who do
Hold
you
on.
work
I'm
for?
sorry. We're with CNN. It's okay. Thank you. Thank you for your help. I'm sorry. I think people.
We're with CNN. It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and she just walks off.
Crazies. All right, a couple more, and then I'm going to cut it out for the night. Who else is still around? All right, so this is exactly what we are trying to stop, because the only way that you can make money in America these days is by taking advantage of the middle-class taxpayer who goes out and works for a living. So here's a perfect example of this. Is priceless, the look on this guy's face when he's confronted. while driving his Ferrari. But I won't ruin it. So listen to this.
Sick Ferrari. Oh. Hey, you're that Mr. Gombolian guy.
Yeah, how you know me?
Yeah, you're the reason Trump's coming to California.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because of all your daycare fraud. Yeah. Can you tell us more about that?
I love it.
I know what you're doing.
You're living large here, I see.
Look at that.
Yo, Mr. Gombolian.
As you know, filmmaker, nice man. As you know.
Why? You're famous now.
Excuse me.
You're famous.
Private property.
I just love it now. All these guys are getting hopefully get pinched and go to jail. Not deported. I want them to go to jail for a very long time for the rest of their lives for doing this stuff. This guy's got a $500,000 Ferrari off of taxpayer money that we all go out and work for. Thank you, Howard. Make sure you subscribe. I appreciate it. We're going to be doing this more frequently. I finally figured out how to get out of the YouTube shadow ban. We've been suppressed for a while, but definitely come back and check us out later. But thanks for hanging out. And let's see, there are a couple more that I wanted to. No, that was it. All right, everybody. It's late, almost 2 a.m. Thank you for hanging out.